They say 150 prototypes were made from 1936 onwards, of which all were destroyed at the outbreak of war, apart from 3, because they didn't want these prototypes to fall into the hands of the Germans. The 2CV, or Toute Petite Voiture, as it was originally called, was designed by Pierre Boulanger, and it was designed as a basic car for the countryman. As the story goes, that one of his criteria was that he should be able to get into it with his top hat on. The other one, that it should be able to take a basket of eggs across a ploughed field without breaking a single one. We've tried that, it does work. And it became the basic vehicle of France.
Well, the grey 2CV is a 1957 2CV, type AZL, which is 425 cc's and is flat twin air-cooled, the same as the other two, but only has 12 horsepower, and then they increased it to 18 horsepower during its short life in the 50s. Well, the obvious thing to anybody is the bonnet. The early ones with the ripples and the side fluting was done away with in about 1961, and it brought in the modern bonnet. It was slightly more bulbous rather than more flowing straight across the front of the car. The canvas boot, that was very early on in the 2CV and up to about 56. Then the steel boot lid came in. The doors, of course, the earlier 50s doors are suicide type, opening from the front, and the seats have had numerous changes through the years. To the untrained eye, they all look the same car. In Holland, it's known as the ugly duckling. It's very much a duck out of water, because on a motorway, it doesn't stand a hope in hell. If I'm using it on the road, I try and leave home very early and stay on the A roads rather than try and use the motorways. It's one of those cars which can always keep to the speed limit. It doesn't need to go any faster than 70, and if you do, well, you leave a few minutes earlier.
The 2CV, although marketed seriously at the very start, in Britain and indeed in Europe, was eventually marketed as a fun toy, as a kind of action man Barbie doll, even to the extent of you had brochures that not only contained cartoons, but in the final stage of 2CV, a whole series of brochures and adverts which had Tintin characters in them, and the 2CV was actually acting out in these scenes. The Hello Dolly cars had eyelashes drawn on them, smiling faces, and the whole marketing of the 2CV was that the car was larger than life. It would make you laugh, it would make you smile, it would amuse your neighbours rather than amaze them. Interestingly, it was never marketed at the Whole Food, CND supporting Open Sandal Brigade, who in many cases bought them.
The cliché 2CV owner really only applies to Britain, I think, as perceived by the motoring public out there, and that is a bearded left-wing schoolteacher who wears a smock and reads The Guardian. If you go to any 2CV functions, you'll never see that animal there at all, not in any great quantity. I think you'll find that in the vicinity of the 2CV there's a lot of green people, and I think a lot of green people think it's the nearest you can get to owning a car without actually going through the act of having one. The 2CV, with its fanatical following and its quirkiness, has become a car in itself because of its shape and what it represents. Nobody has a Citroën 2CV, they have a 2CV. The same as you have a Mini these days. You don't have a British Lane or an Austin or a Morris Mini, you have a Mini.
It can't have been economic for Citroëns to carry on making it as long as they did. They kept saying they were going to drop it, and every time there was a terrific outcry. In the event, I think it was the economics and the advent of emission control and regulations and restrictions, so it was finally killed off, of course, in 1985.
In my short life as it is at the moment, the 2CV has taken me across America and across Canada and right through Europe, North Africa, Nord Cap, Russia, Leningrad, Moscow. It's getting further and further, and next year is Northwest Australia.
There'd been speculation on Citroën's new car, but even the speculators of the press probably underestimated what would come.
This is a DS. It's called a DS because in French, DS means goddess. And it is, in terms of the motor car, a pure goddess. She's beautiful. The first time I saw the Citroën DS, I was about 11 years old. The car had been introduced a couple of years previously, and I was out walking with my father. We saw the new Citroën. It just was gliding along. We just had to stop and watch it slow down, and stopped. And as the driver got out, the car raised itself up. As he shut the door, it sank down on its haunches. We waited while the driver came out of the newsagent's shop, got back inside the car. It sunk down. As the engine started, it just lifted itself up. With a purr, it was away. There was just nothing like it. No car had ever had such an impact. And from that day to this, I've loved them. The other cars in the street when I was that age, even though they were built after the war, the designs were actually pre-war. And then the DS came along. There was nothing like it. It was like a spaceship. What makes it so special, it is a British-built car, whereas the French cars would have had cloth seats and a plastic dash. That was too futuristic for the British motorist, so they were given such luxuries as leather seats and walnut dash. But even so, with all the verve of the French car. For the first time, hydraulics controlled every aspect of the car, not only suspension, but brakes, steering, and gearbox. And it gave an absolutely constant ride. It was a magic carpet ride. Other cars, you could feel the bumps, you could be shaken about, but with the DS, it was like riding on a magic carpet.
Citroën, right from the start, were eccentric, innovative, and in their marketing have tried to reflect that. So that you get, for example, a DS Safari with a harp, a double bass, a trombone in the back. You get shots of children with balloons with Citroën logos on. You get strange figures with umbrellas walking through Citroën brochures. The whole marketing ploy was to make you amused, to emphasise a particular Gallic charm.
They were very complicated cars, and lots of people were totally frightened of them. It's often been known that these cars have been a plumber's nightmare. A normal car, shall we say, may have cost £500 or £600. A Citroën DS would have cost £1,500. It was very expensive.
Of course, the car did prove to be a success not only in the private ownership but in various rallying successes, particularly in the long distance, rougher rallies, which is a thing that Citroëns can continue to this day. Lately, Citroëns, of course, have got away from the quirky image. They are now into the mass production market with the advent of the BX. Nowadays, Citroëns are selling to your average car driver who doesn't realise the technological innovations that are under the bonnet of the car he drives. As far as he's concerned, it's a very good car for the job, it's comfortable, he has the performance he wants, he has the price he wants, all the other things that people look for when they're buying a new car. But probably a lot of the drivers don't realise the history behind it. Some of us do, some of us enjoy it, that's why some of us carry on still driving the cars.
Dadelijk het vervolg van Boys Toys met de Science Detectives.